Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grayson. This is the KMG Show for Friday, June the 24th, 2022. And hang on just one second. Sorry about that. You'd think that after 500 shows, I would have memorized the lighting protocol, but apparently not. Apparently not. So, oh, happy day. You all know what I'm talking about. But let's have a recap here from, well, a whole bunch of people at Politico. The Supreme Court Friday revoked the constitutional right to an abortion that has been in place for half a century, overturning Roe v. Wade on a 5-4 vote, clearing the way for dozens of states to swiftly ban the procedure and throwing the country into uncharted political, legal, social, and medical territory. The bombshell decision is set to upend elections across the country as governors, attorneys general, and other state and local leaders gain new powers to determine when abortion will be permitted, if at all, and who should be prosecuted and potentially incarcerated when bans take effect. The High Court's vote to overturn nearly 5 decades of court rulings upholding a right to end a pregnancy won the support of 5 of the court's 6 conservative justices, with Chief Justice John Roberts and the court's 3 liberal justices opposed overturning Roe. John Roberts, well, no surprise there. The majority opinion, authored by Justice Samuel Alito, hewed closely to the draft version obtained exclusively by Politico and published in early May. In its official opinion, the court's conservative majority went beyond simply resolving the case before them, Mississippi's near ban on abortion at 15 weeks of pregnancy. 15 weeks. Well, that's a lot of weeks, isn't it? That is almost 4 months. And instead overturned both Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, long-standing precedents that barred states from banning abortion before the point of fetal viability. Alito wrote, quote, "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision. This court cannot bring about the permanent resolution of a rancorous national controversy simply by dictating a settlement and telling the people to move on," unquote. As the draft previewed, Alito argued that history demonstrates no tradition in the United States of a right to abortion, and the absence of such protections undermines the Supreme Court's conclusion 49 years ago that abortion rights were implicit in a constitutional right to privacy. Yes, the constitutional right to privacy that was made up out of whole cloth in Griswold versus Connecticut. However, the court's 5-justice majority also cautioned that their momentous decision to retreat from Roe does not mean that other court decisions grounded in privacy rights are in jeopardy. Nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion, Alito wrote. Perhaps not. Justice Thomas had something to say about that. And he concluded in what he wrote that Lawrence versus Texas, Obergefell versus Hodges, and Griswold versus Connecticut are all part of the same flimsy reasoning that led to Roe v. Wade. Yes, a curious thing. We hear so much about democracy these days. Well, of course, America was founded not as a democracy, but as a republic. And in terms of gay marriage, there were referenda across the United States. And typically, the anti-gay marriage people won. And so various courts said, no, you can't. What about democracy? No, democracy comes second to justice. Oh, I see. So when you have the votes, you use the votes. And when you don't have the votes, you will appeal to justice. That's how it works. And of course, if you don't have either of those two things, then you can go out onto the streets and riot. So Sophie Lewis in The Nation 2 days ago, she made it quite clear, just in case no one had noticed. Abortion involves killing, and that's okay. Exclamation point. Ooh, nice clickbait title there. To be pro-choice is to be against forced life. Oh, forced life. So perhaps these women should get back to me when they have mastered asexual reproduction. It takes a man and a woman to make a child. But one gets the impression that people like Sophie Lewis and so many others have forgotten this. She begins, in 2019, I published a kind of manifesto, Full Surrogacy Now, whose opening line is, "It is a wonder we let fetuses inside us." Wow, this woman, a real barrel of monkeys. The opening pages are entirely given over to my extended paean to the process of gestating and all its shockingly grisly biology, its everyday solemnity. Whereas in other species, a female can often discard or expel a pregnancy at will, in our species, a hyperinvasive placenta puts the gestator at risk of lethal hemorrhage. Locked down, our body becomes a daredevil participant in a wrestling match or similar extreme sport. We cannot easily quit. From this starting point, I make a case for rethinking human gestation as real and currently often deadly dangerous labor. Oh, do they demand to be paid for it? Deserving of maximal support. The controversial part is the key correlate of viewing gestating as labor is that forcing someone to gestate against their will is forced labor. Of course, these people, they all inhabit a world where contraception is not ubiquitous and cheap. It's a mystery world. It's a mystery world of unicorns and such, but a world in which these unicorns are slaughtered, and then the people who slaughter them boast about it afterwards. Let's look at the headlines from the Daily Mail. Pro-choice extremists plan night of rage across America, with Justice Clarence Thomas home on the hit list after he said Scottish should now reconsider gay marriage and contraception. No, that is not what he wrote. Griswold versus Connecticut created, again, out of whole cloth, a right to privacy that does not exist in the Constitution. Night of rage, okay. Protesters are planning demonstrations outside the home of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas Friday night after he revealed he now has laws protecting gay marriage, gay sexual activity, and contraception in his sights after axing Roe v. Wade. Again, a half-truth at best. Following Friday's landmark decision, Thomas called on his fellow jurists to overturn previous rulings that followed similar legal precedent. Thomas has become a particular target of protesters after it emerged that his wife had pushed to help overturn the result of the 2020 election result and keep President Donald Trump in power. Protesters in Washington, D.C. shared arrangements to carpool together on Friday evening. Enraged, devastated, pissed the F off, so are we, tweeted Our Rights DC. Pro-choice extremist group, just pro-abortion, because that's what they are. It's pro-life, pro-choice. You're either pro-abortion or you're anti-abortion. This term choice, this weasel word choice, a woman's right to choose. To choose what? A boyfriend, a husband, her hairstyle, her handbag, her nail color. Tensions over abortion have spiraled ever since a draft opinion was leaked last month, signaling the court was about to overturn protections. The Department of Homeland Security, in a memo Friday obtained by ABC News, said it expects violence could last for weeks from domestic violent extremists. The bulletin said, quote, "We expect violence could occur for weeks following the release, particularly as DVEs may be mobilized to respond to changes in state laws and ballot measures on abortion stemming from the decision. We base this assessment on an observed increase in violent incidents across the United States following the unauthorized disclosure in May of a draft majority opinion on the case." As he condemned the court's decision Friday, President Joe Biden urged protesters to remain peaceful. "I call on everyone, no matter how deeply they care about this decision, to keep all protests peaceful, 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 peaceful. No intimidation. Violence is never acceptable. Threats and intimidation are not speech. We must stand against violence in any form, regardless of your rationale. Oh, yes, Gilead and the Handmaid's Tale are back. Oh, we're living in the Handmaid's Tale, yes. Women just, they can't do anything in America, apparently, and they're slaves of men. I'll repeat, once again, that I get the distinct impression that a great many of the Handmaid's Tale fanatics, they get a sexual frisson from the idea of being oppressed in this manner. Heartbroken Michelle Obama leads furious criticism of Scottish overturning of Roe v. Wade as Amy Schumer, the professional tampon shill, blasts justice for following intentions of slave-owning rapists who've been dead for hundreds of years. Is someone putting pills in her jelly beans again? Hailey Bieber, Taylor Swift, Busy Phillips, Kim Kardashian, Bette Midler, and Jamila Jamil are among the other celebrities furiously bashing the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Yep. A real brains trust there. So Busy Phillips, she now has some show about a female singers, Girls 5 Eva or something like this. She is, of course, famous for her abortions. Yes, she had an abortion at 15. Did she have another abortion? I don't know. Let's see. But she's a really unpleasant woman. She really, really is. Who else do we have here? 58-year-old Obama was one of the first high-profile people to react to the decision, taking to Instagram to post a lengthy statement slamming the overturning of Roe in the minutes after it was announced, describing herself as heartbroken while blasting the Supreme Court for ridding women of their fundamental right to make informed decisions about their own bodies. Now do vaccine mandates. I'm heartbroken that we may now be destined to learn the painful lessons of a time before Roe was made law of the land, a time when women risked losing their lives getting illegal abortions, a time when government denied women control over their reproductive functions, forced them to move forward with pregnancies they didn't want, and then abandoned them once the babies were born. This is what our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers lived through, and now here we are again. I've seen very few people point out that what this decision by the Supreme Court is a tremendous victory for federalism. The United States is supposed to be a federal union, but for decades and decades, Washington, D.C. has been throwing its weight around and telling the states, no, the protections that you enjoy in the Constitution, they're not really valid. They don't obtain any longer. The Supreme Court did not outlaw abortion. It merely returned it to the states. And if you live in California and New York and many other states, then you can abort your children to your heart's content. And, oh, yes. What does corporate America have to say about this? Disney, JP Morgan, Meta, and Netflix are among firms announcing they'll cover abortion expenses of employees who have to travel out of their home state for an abortion. Isn't that sweet of them? Other firms, including Vogue, Condé Nast, and Yelp, have also signaled they'll cover expenses in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Yeah. You see, big business, that's your real daddy. That's your real husband. It really is. They just have your best interests at heart. They just want the best for you. That's all that they want. Aimee Therese responded, The idea that employers will pay a female employee's expenses to go kill a baby so that she can remain at work as a productive employee is so much more dystopian than any of the Handmaid's Tale fan fiction. Indeed, it is. So, yes, and we got the typical response here, which you hear again and again from someone called Dereka A. Purnell. If this was about babies, there would be universal health care, free education, free daycare. Southern states would be doing all they can to drop the black maternal mortality rate. This is about power and control. Amy Therese responded, unless other people's taxes will fund all of my child's expenses, I should have the right to kill it. I wonder whether these employers go far enough. You see, they're willing to make a trade-off here, and they see themselves making a profit. If they give maternity leave, well, they will lose X amount of money. If they give an employee pay for abortions out of state, they will lose much less money. Also, they won't have to deal with the problem of divided loyalties among mothers. But I wonder, does this go far enough? Shouldn't these employees start giving bounties to women who decide to kill their babies? Shouldn't they? I mean, really, if they feel so strongly about it. Disney told employees Friday that it recognizes the impact of the abortion ruling, but remains committed to providing comprehensive access to quality health care, including for abortions. Quote, we recognize the impact of the ruling and that we remain committed to providing comprehensive access to quality and affordable care for all our employees, cast members, and their families, including family planning and reproductive care, no matter where they live. America's largest bank, JP Morgan Chase, has also joined the growing list of major companies that will cover expenses for U.S.-based employees who need to travel to get a legal abortion. That's your role, women, to be slaves to the managerial state. So which states? Again, from the Mail, the 18 states which immediately outlawed abortion, including Democrat-led Michigan and Wisconsin, as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned, thanks to trigger laws set up in anticipation. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers are both trying to undo their states' respective bans in the courts, but they remain in place now. So let's look at these states. The ones where abortion is banned: Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Utah, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. And also Michigan, as previously, and Ohio and Indiana. Okay. So that still leaves, a very great chunk of the United States, again, including New York State, Pennsylvania, and California, where, again, women who choose to kill their babies can do so. That's federalism, miniature American flags for some, abortion for others, as the joke goes. In Wisconsin, Governor Evers says his administration is looking at every option to fight abortion bans in the state. We're going to do everything we can in my power, whether it's executive action or working with others on other opportunities, to fight this as long and hard as we can. This is really important. Think about what was done today to the women of Wisconsin and women of this country. Essentially, politicians now are in charge of their reproductive health. I mean, honest to God, how could anything be more scary for our women for the state of Wisconsin? Yes, the horror of childbirth. Oh, and I suppose you're all thinking, what does Hillary Clinton have to say about this? Well, I think you can guess. But I was particularly taken with the form in which she expressed herself. Quote, most Americans believe the decision to have a child is one of the most sacred decisions there is, and that such decisions should remain between patients and their doctors. Today's Supreme Court opinion will live in infamy as a step backward for women's rights and human rights. Yes. Hillary Clinton says abortion is a sacrament. Hail Moloch. Now, when I use the word sacrament, I use it deliberately because a great many feminists seem to regard abortion as a sacrament. That's why so many of them are so quick to tell us, well, repeatedly about their own abortions. One would have thought they might want to keep this to themselves. It's a rather squalid business. Anyway, you look at it. And President Biden, well, we'll call him President Biden. Again, all these stories are from the Mail. What did Biden have to say? He slammed it he blames Trump for this. Says he tipped the scales of justice with his Scottish picks. That's how it works, Joe Biden. I assume that Joe Biden used to know how it works. First Lady Joe Biden says the right to an abortion was stolen from us. Yes, it's all Trump's fault. How about Ruth Bader Ginsburg? She could have resigned. She was very, very old and frail woman. And she didn't resign because, I don't know, she wanted Hillary to be president. So, what difference does it make? But, well, it made a big difference, as it turned out. A big difference. And let's go to the chat. Hello to Anne Ranchokin 666, who reports I'm currently not having an abortion while armed. Yeah, I want to talk about this. Various stupid people, or people who should have known better, say, oh, the Supreme Court rules against gun restriction, concealed carry, but rules against Roe v. Wade. Well, there's a real simple reason for that, which is this, that abortion is not in the Constitution and firearms are in the Constitution, in the Second Amendment. So it's pretty much right near the top. Hello to Dan, Palcasso 88, Lamprey Milt, Mercurius Olikis, Dawn from Beyond, Brian Frakes, Dan Allison, and David the Gnome, and V. Who says Feliz Dia. Dr. Deadname says Twitter has gone completely mad. Hello to our Finnish friend, Jaakko Raipala, who says glorious news. Seven Costanza says Thomas going out with a bang. Dr. Deadname says, I guess the penumbras stopped emanating. Yes, indeed. That's a real thing, by the way. Emanations from a penumbra led to Roe v. Wade. Seven Costanza says, I support easy access to abortion since the U.S. population is such a dysgenic disaster, but the reaction has been funny. Well, one of the reasons that the United States has become a dysgenic disaster is because intelligent women, particularly university-educated women, have stopped having children. David the Gnome says, I'm completely against abortion, which is murder. Hello to Brian Oblivion. Yes, a Cronenberg reference there. Hello to Frothing Fanboy, who asks, anyone remember Atomic Dog? I recognize the name. Hello to John S. Metal Mike. It says, I suspect the federal law will be passed very soon. I don't think so. I don't think that they could get this through. Seven Costanza predicts riots will probably be weak, but we'll see. What are the chances of the Senate defeating it? I don't think they have the votes. Mostly peaceful fires or somewhat peaceful fires incoming, asks Dan. Dan Allison says people who, they're so smart, but they've never heard of condoms. Oh, yes, and the many other forms of birth control, which are ubiquitous. You're curious, Alika says, I thought pregnancy was able to be avoided. Well, one of the arguments in favor of birth control, artificial contraception, was that the availability of artificial contraception would mean there'd be no need for abortion. And this is largely true. But look, we heard at the time that abortion was legalized in my country and in America, women don't use abortion as birth control. Well, they do. They do. A lot. Millions do use it as a form of birth control because they don't want to be on the pill, and their boyfriends or husbands don't want to use rubbers or whatever. Okay. Frothing Fanboy says, okay, we have bigger fish to fry. Yako Rapala says, the reaction here in America's overseas colonies is weird. Our Americanized Twitter crowd is super angry about this and seemingly completely unaware that Finland's abortion laws are much stricter. Seven Costanza says, the fact that a black guy is the most powerful conservative figure in the U.S. is hilarious. The N-word is being thrown around against him by progressives. Yes, it is. DR3, perhaps, but in this case, it seems to be justified. Metal Mike points out that freedom of choice didn't apply to vaccines, did it? David the Gnome says, I remember Breitbart's talk about the veritable keel hauling Clarence Thomas underwent when he was put on the court. Yes, I remember it. I remember it well. I also remember when William Rehnquist, his hearings, and he was asked about something that he'd been a Goldwater operative in Phoenix in 1964. And how many decades ago is that? And why would I remember that? And why is that relevant? And of course, the conservative justice who was rejected, he was pretty much reduced to tears by Senator Edward Kennedy, demanding why he had given so little money to charity. And he did not tell Senator Ted that the reason why he had given so little money to charity was because his wife was dying of cancer and all his available funds were being spent on medical bills. You're curious, Alika says Thomas decided to put a finger in the eye of the nomenclatura. Frisson. Yes, I love that word. Dr. Deadname says, what? We're enslaving women? Let me get my net. Metal Mike says, Canada will jump on the abortion tourism train. Happy Pride and glory to Ukraine. Are they secret BDSM fans, says Brian Frakes? Well, judging by what I see, and self-published novels by women in the United States, yikes. And who else do we have here? Hello to Yo Mama, who says, let God arise and let his enemies be scattered. Hello to William Hicks. And William Hicks, yes, Biden's instruction card said, walk to the podium, say the ruling is bad, try not to drool as you speak. Yeah, I'll get to the card a little later. How are the abortion laws in Ukraine? I don't know. I do know that gay marriage is forbidden there. John S. says, yep, Clarence Thomas is the ultimate thought patroller. He's outdone all the other weak sauce appointees so many times now. Frothing Fanboy says, I don't get it. If you are desperate to not have a baby, how about getting your tubes tied or avoid sex? One of these ferocious feminists, Jessica or something like that, she tells her story about an abortion. And then in her 30s, she had an abortion. And, this was an accident. It was an accident? Seriously. If you are determined to never have a child again and you are a woman, you can get your tubes tied. It's that simple. It's a very common operation. I don't know what went on there. Let's look at the headlines from Drudge. The court giveth and the court taketh away. Pence says make it national. No, it should not be made national. The United States is supposed to be a federal union. Texas Attorney General declares agency holiday in remembrance of unborn. Assaults against clinics, patients surge. Protests erupt, developing New York City, Los Angeles next. Patagonia will bail out arrested employees. That is obviously not the district of Argentina and Chile, right? The bottom of the world, it must mean something else. A Dem seek probe of text use of personal data. Repeating this lie, Clarence Thomas, birth control, gay marriage is next. No, it's not what he wrote. Pelosi, what is happening here? Oh my, she nearly fell apart. He was shaking. Collins Mansion misled by Kavanaugh, Gorsuch. World leaders, horrific, appalling. Yes, Donald Trump was asked whether he deserved the credit for this, and he said, no, God deserves the credit for it. And let's see, who else is, the Hollywood celebrities. That's always fun. Let's hear from Hollywood celebrities, because Hollywood, it's a paradise. It's a moral paradise. This is from David Eng at Breitbart. Stars including Seth MacFarlane, Bette Midler, Michael Moore, Alyssa Milano, and CBS's 2.5 Men star John Cryer publicized their emotional meltdowns. How dare they? Bette Midler demanded. Not too long ago, this would have been dystopian sci-fi. Seth MacFarlane despaired. Alyssa Milano tweeted, banning abortion is about controlling women and trans men. Oh, shut up. Trans men. Men can't have babies, Alyssa Milano. Adding that the court's decision is also about upholding white supremacy. What? What? Yes, let's hear from Seth MacFarlane of Family Guy and a whole bunch of other series. Family Guy is replayed so often on TV that occasionally, a couple minutes will come on. And I think that whenever I see Family Guy, even with the sound turned off, I can feel the IQ points leaching out of me. Oh, Bette Midler, has a sunflower for, the Ukraine. Michael Moore says, bastards. Judd Apatow, who has a Ukrainian flag, says nothing matters except voter registration and turnout. Patton Oswalt, the dude who cried about beer on TV, has made a big decision about your life, ladies. Oh, that's a Kavanaugh joke. Stephen King says the Republican Party is living in a cone of denial. Hey, Stephen King, didn't you write this novel called It, which has an underage gangbang with 4 or 5 boys having at like a 14-year-old girl? You wrote that, didn't you, Stephen King? Piper Pirabeau says, here's an abortion access map state by state. Yes. Again, as I was talking about the AT&T girl, what's her name? Weintraub. That, yes, why don't you make it so that every time, I see a picture of you or think of you, I think about death. I don't think that can be very good for your career. Adam Scott says this is so awful, been trying to figure out what to say, but where to start. So women's rights are human rights, and then a bunch of obscenity. Again, it takes a man and a woman to make a child. And the courts have held repeatedly that men have no say in this. I mean, as to whether abortion will take place. None. Tyranny of the extreme minority, says John Cho. Well, again, this is federalism. And people in states like North and South Dakota feel differently about this than people in states like California and New York. Viola Davis is gutted. Oh, Linda Carter is, she's heartbroken. Oh, Billy Eichner, who is one of the, Physiognomy is Real, this homosexual comedian is one of the most evil-looking people I've ever seen in my life. He tweets, "Get your fictional, hateful Bible stories and your fake fictional religious bullshit out of our effing lives. F you." Okay. So that's what Hollywood has to say. You know, even if these people, even if they disagreed, would they dare say so? Seriously, would they dare say so? Do you ever have anyone in, Hollywood speaking out against PETA, which is a completely deranged organization? But let's talk some specifics here. Maxine Waters, nice wig, Maxine. How old is she? Is she like 107 years old? This is Paul Joseph Watson at Summit News. Congresswoman Maxine Waters responded to the landmark abortion ban by vowing, "To hell with the Supreme Court, we will defy them." Once again, you love the Supreme Court when it was full of people that made the decisions that you liked, but you know how the rules work, right? They ain't seen nothing yet. Women are going to control their bodies no matter how they try to stop them. To hell with the Supreme Court. We will defy them. Women will be able to control their bodies, and if they think that Black women are intimidated or afraid, they got another thought coming. Actually, the phrase is they got another thing coming. Black women will be out in droves. We'll be out by the thousands. We will be out by the millions. We're going to make sure we fight for the right to control our own bodies. Andy No reports large numbers of riot police are being mobilized in Washington, D.C. Oh, yes. Did you see the footage of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? She seemed to think that it was a big joke or forget that she was on camera. A goofy smile on her face and clapping like a spaz like this, yucking it up. Well, screaming about insurrection. It's not a good look. Now, she said that this was, an attack on women and birthing people. Yes, birthing people. She also said it was an attack on men. And I thought, how is this an attack on men? Is it an attack on the men, those men who bully or coerce their girlfriends or wives into getting an abortion? Is it an attack on them? Yes, from Breitbart. SCOTUS has endangered the lives of all women and all birthing people and chose to strip rights from men, too. I'd like more detail. I'd like more detail on that. What is happening here? Emotional Nancy Pelosi slashes at Trump and the Republicans over cruel Roe v. Wade decision. And she's pushing a falsehood, a very deliberate falsehood. Right-wing politicians like Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell pack the court. No, they do not pack the court. They had the votes to install the nominee that they wanted. It's the same as for any pregnancy. Packing the court, which is something that never happened, is a reference to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, whose unconstitutional New Deal measures were regularly slapped down by the Supreme Court in the 1930s. And then FDR said, "Keep this up, and I'll add another 6 justices." And the Supreme Court got the message and stopped slapping down FDR's illegal New Deal measures. But let's hear from Monica Lewinsky. I sometimes feel sorry for this woman. I mean, she is famous for one thing. And you know what that thing is. She is unable to let go of it. I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again because I like it. That at the time, someone commented that Monica Lewinsky would make some dentist a happy man. What does she have to say about this? From her tweet: "F you Roberts, F you Thomas, F you Alito, F you Kavanaugh, F you Gorsuch, F you Coney Barrett." Only she didn't say F. Okay, so Monica Lewinsky, How many bambini there? None. Zero. 48 years old, no children. I suppose we really shouldn't be surprised by this. The fossil Andrea Mitchell, Washington Free Beacon reports MSNBC anchor struggles to fight back tears while talking about Roe. What a pity, what a pity, what a pity. So let's check her out in terms of fecundity. Andrea Mitchell is 75 years old. She has been married twice. She's been married for 25 years to Alan Greenspan. How many bambini there? Zero. A big goose egg. Again, really not that surprising, is it? And, before we get to Justin Trudeau, let's have some more well-known people. I'm just loving this Schadenfreude is just so delicious. This is from Alana Mastrangelo at Breitbart. Professors have social media meltdowns over Supreme Court overrules Roe v. Wade. And there's a picture of Ibram X. Kendi as he styles himself. And I have some advice from Ibram X. Kendi. Stop messing about with your hair. Pulling back these braids, you're making yourself bald. Has no one learned anything from Jada Pinkett Smith? He was born Ibram Henry Rogers. The X is for, I don't know, it sounds cool. Could that be it? Kendi says the Supreme Court decision to strike down Roe v. Wade rushes the nation toward an abyss where we have no civil or human rights. When women don't have the right to make reproductive choices about their own bodies, we lose a foundational right. When we lose foundational rights, all rights are threatened. Oh, you mean like the right to have a job because the state has declared your business unessential? The right to go out in public because the state has decided that you're possibly going to pollute the atmosphere with your breath and sicken everyone else. Stanford assistant professor Hakeem Jefferson also reacted to the court's life-saving decision, bizarrely claiming that women not having the ability to kill their own unborn children is barbaric. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, there's this word illegitimate. We're hearing this word illegitimate a lot. Oh, David Hogg. I'm mad as hell and I'm ready to protest. This is a guy who's famous because he was not at a school shooting. Yeah, that's why he's famous. And, Brittany Cooper, a.k.a. Professor Crunk, that's what she actually calls herself, says the cruelty is the point. Professor Crunk is an associate professor, and she's author of the book Feminist AF. Bodily autonomy is sacred, and one can love God and believe in the right to abortion. I do, according to Professor Crunk. Yes. Well, we know that's true. I'm right. I mean, we have scripture to prove it. You know, from the book of Matthew, as I recall. Hang on, let me get the quotation here. Blessed are the baby killers, for they will be called children of God. Yes, I think that's the scriptural basis for Professor Crunk's opinion. Also, the opinion of Yvette Nicole Brown, who was on Community, which is one of my favorite shows, and I greatly loved her on Community. And she's tossing around the Christian card. A woman's right to choose is a health decision, a personal health decision. I'm a Christian, and I know that. Oh, Gilead makes an appearance. Oh, I hope the 53% of white women who just couldn't stomach voting for Hillary Clinton are happy that they've ensured that their daughters grow up in Gilead. All right. And here we go. Oh, Rosanna Arquette. I don't want to hear from that stupid woman. Barack Obama. Okay, I guess you know what he had to say. Oh, okay. So Justin Trudeau. Let's go to Justin Trudeau because the whole world wants to know what Justin Trudeau has to say about Roe v. Wade. And this is from CBC News, John Paul Tasker. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau weighed in Friday on the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn decades-long jurisprudence on abortion, calling what's unfolding south of the border a horrific development. Quote, "My heart goes out to the millions of American women who are now set to lose their legal right to an abortion. I can't imagine the fear and anger you are feeling right now." Trudeau said no government, politician, or man should force a woman to carry out a pregnancy, reiterating, or repeating, as others might write, that under his Liberal government, women in Canada will know that we will always stand up for your right to choose. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, taking a break from cheering on the Banderites in the Ukraine, also condemned the ruling, saying Friday she had a visceral reaction. "I was just shocked and horrified and so worried. Actually, I think you're past childbearing age," Chrystia Freeland. Freeland said that generations of feminists fought for abortion access in Canada, and she'll do what she can to help preserve that right. "I want all Canadian women and girls to hear from me that the right to choice, their right to an abortion, is a fundamental right. We will not let that right be undermined in any way here in our country." And Jagmeet Singh. Yeah, I guess you know what Jagmeet Singh had to say. Yes, abortion access. He is very worried about abortion access. What that means is Jagmeet Singh thinks that there are not enough abortions being performed in Canada, even though it is one of 2 countries in the world, I think, with no restrictions whatsoever on abortion. But I think that we should keep in mind when we hear anything from Justin Trudeau that he is a thicko. This is from the post-millennial Roberto Raquel Cruz on April the 20th. A video has emerged of a young Prime Minister Justin Trudeau discussing his inability to do basic math. The video shows Trudeau during his teaching days at West Point Grey Academy in Vancouver, where he tells a crowd that he has a learning disability. "I have a little confession to make," he said. "I have a slight learning disability. I am dysnumeric," he says. Being dysnumeric does not exist, though what Trudeau describes is likely dyscalculia or dysarrhythmia. Quote, "It's not a big one, but it's definitely there. I am dysnumeric. What that means is I have an inability to handle small numbers and little calculations, those easy things that people do so well. 13 plus 14. Under pressure is even worse. If I pick up numbers and try to do it, it means I can't remember telephone numbers. However, once we got through elementary school and into high school, where everyone supposedly knew their times tables, which I have still difficulty with, and you're no longer called to do simple math, I got better." He has not been called on to do simple math since high school. How about when he went to the store? I have $100, say, and I want to buy this, and this. And you add them together. Will I be able to pay for this with my $100? In grade 6, we had this teacher that gave me drills, very simple ones. Just stand in front of the board, mental math, 2 plus 3 minus 1 times 2 minus 4 plus 2. How many people followed that? Okay. I learned to work with that. I will be dysnumeric for the rest of my life. But I've been a math teacher in grade 5. I've been a math teacher in grade 8. I've tutored calculus, really now. I've done university level math in an informal way. I like mathematics. I love physics, unquote. So parents in Vancouver were paying a small fortune to send their kiddies to the West Point Grey Academy, a private school, and they got a math teacher that can't add 13 and 14. The story concludes, it has been known that the Prime Minister has a disinterest. That's not what disinterest means in numbers, especially when it comes to monetary policy, something he said he doesn't think about. I don't. What sort of person confesses in public that he can't add 13 and 14? Does he think that it's cute, perhaps? Leponius Maximus Meridius says, I've started a Ukraine think tank for anyone who might be interested. Ruslan Akhbatov says, go Russia. Who else? Enumerate. Yes, Yo Mama has it right. Pete Bauman says, no brain, no headache. Actually uninterested, says Mercurius Ulicus. Yes, okay. I got to get the ban hammer. Got to get the ban hammer here out because we're getting tons of spam. Okay, there we go. And I got one, and there's two, and there's three, and there's four. Okay, I made it so that this person can't post anymore, but this person posted about, I don't know, about 10 sexual spam notes here. And I'm going to have to get rid of all of them one by one. If you'll just hang in there with me. Was this automated? I keep scrubbing them and more keep coming up. Okay. Again, my apologies. My apologies. I haven't had this problem. Well, not really ever, actually. I don't have a moderator on this channel currently. We heard yesterday from our former moderator. I'd like to thank him for his service. But he has a job now, so he can't do that. What did this guy put up, 100 or something? Yeah. Okay. I don't know whether I can keep doing this. Perhaps I will go back afterwards and remove them all, if that's possible. Yeah, okay. Again, I've deleted about 20 of them, and more just keep appearing. Okay. All those bots hang out at the live poker channels on YouTube, says J Boss. Dr. Deadname says, why do people bother with this porn spam? The return on investment must be minuscule. Chad, yes, Chad Chadson was the name of our valiant moderator. And again, I'd like to thank him for his service. And okay, let's see what else we have here. William Hicks says, sublime observation. Pat Boone is killing it selling walk-in tubs on the rerun TV channels. He looks good wearing that bathrobe and hairpiece. I thought he was dead. He was a huge pop star in the middle 50s. Huge. And he was greatly mocked because what he did was to take songs like, Little Richard songs or whatever, and make anodyne versions of them. I recall some years ago, he got into a really stupid kind of argument over heavy metal music, where he was debating with some heavy metal musician, and he said heavy metal music is evil. And the heavy metaler said, no, it isn't. And he said, yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. That was pretty much the level of the debate. Okay. So, let's talk about, what are we going to talk about now? We talked about, let's talk about Pope Francis, anti-Pope Francis. This is from Michael Haynes at LifeSite News. Pope Francis met with a group of transgender individuals Wednesday, with one of the group, a man who now lives as a woman, claiming the Pope told him to always be myself. At the end of his general audience, June 22nd, Francis met with a group of 6 transgender people who were accompanied by an alphabet people promoting priest, a nun, and the mother of a transgender boy. One of the group, Alessia Nobile, a 43-year-old man who now lives as a woman, told fanpage.it that it was exciting. We felt welcomed. Nobile presented himself to Pope Francis as a transgender girl. He's 43 years old. What sort of 43-year-old woman would describe herself as a girl? But he said that Francis replied he didn't care who I was, that we have one father, and he wanted to tell me, you are a sister. Nobile also gave the Pope a copy of his autobiography called Lambina Invisibile, which details his transgender thoughts and desires while growing up. Pope Francis reportedly told Nobile, you did well to write your story. Bravo. Nobile added that Francis told him to always be myself, but not to be wrapped up in prejudice against the church. The 43-year-old has a degree in social sciences, but currently earns his living as a sex worker. That's a prostitute, by the way. And in similar news, this is from David Mastio at USA Today. I know something about Gannett's evolution since I was USA Today's deputy editorial page editor until August, when I was demoted after I tweeted, people who are pregnant are also women. That idea was forbidden because a news reporter covering diversity, equity, and inclusion wrote a story detailing how transgender men can get pregnant. I compounded my sin against this new orthodoxy by calling the idea that men can get pregnant an opinion. If I wanted to keep my job at USA Today, my bosses informed me I needed to delete these offensive tweets because they were causing pain to the alphabet people, activists, and journalists on our staff. Now, I've been an opinion journalist for 30 years. I thought I was authorized to have opinions. The idea that women are the ones who get pregnant has gone from scientific fact to opinion to outright falsehood in the blink of an eye. Nevertheless, it remains my opinion that women get pregnant. Women, after all, come with all the accoutrements of vaginas, uteruses, ovaries, and mammary glands. Don't misunderstand. I want nothing more than for trans and non-binary people to live free and fulfilling lives, work in peace, and pursue happiness as they see fit. In my personal life, I love one of them. But the alphabet people employee resource group and the newsroom diversity committee thought I should be fired. That makes me worry. No, I don't worry. For me, I'll be fine. I'm a cis hetero white male with all the privilege that goes with it, as I have learned in my Gannett mandated diversity training. To even complain on my behalf would be a microaggression, as I also learned in Gannett training. What I do worry about is that Gannett shareholders are being taken for a ride. Gannett's story is that it is becoming the USA Today network in which newspapers in dozens of states will embrace diversity, reflect their communities, and bubble up a uniquely accurate view of America that millions will pay for. But what if our journalism is written by people who look like America but sound like the Harvard English department? What if we look like our communities but don't think anything like them or share their values and priorities? Readers are bound to notice. Isn't it amazing how quickly this happened? Oh, yeah, you don't have to be a woman to give birth. What? You would have been considered insane to say that publicly, even, a couple of years ago. And now we have AOC talking about birthing persons. We have the leader of Britain's Labour Party talking about birthing persons. We have cabinet appointees or whatever asked, what is a woman? I'm not a biologist. That's not my job, sir. It all happened so quickly, as if it was planned. One doesn't want to get too conspiratorial, But, and, oh yes, the note card. This is from Charlie Spearing at Breitbart. A recent photo of President Joe Biden's note card is going viral online as it reveals a new level of detailed instructions provided to the leader of the free world. You, in caps, enter the Roosevelt room and say hello to the participants. The note card instructs Biden. You take your seat. The photo of the note card was taken by Drew Angerer of Getty Images during a meeting Biden conducted at the White House about the federal state offshore wind implementation partnership Thursday. Oh, okay. So you enter, you take your seat, press enters, you give brief comments, and then the number of minutes is indicated. Press departs. You ask Liz Schuler, President AFL-CIO, a question. Note, Liz is joining virtually. You thank participants. You depart. Okay, this is on a card. It's on cardstock where it says the president at the top. Okay, so the president's staffers are they're just admitting. They're not even bothered to trying to hide the fact that the president of the United States is a senile buffoon. Okay, so, you walk into the room and you sit down. Well, do people need to be told this in any circumstances in that sort of context? It's pretty much understood, right? Oh, and then the press enters and you're going to take questions. Well, that's why the press is there, right? The press is there so they can ask you questions. And of course, what does Joe Biden do? He talks up wind power, which is a boondoggle, useless, and he rails against the oil companies. Oh, yeah. So the United States of America has sanctions against how many major oil producing companies? Venezuela, Iran, Russia. That might have something to do with price and supply. No, I'm not going to allow offshore drilling. I'm going to shut down the Keystone Pipeline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, to the extent that we can talk about Biden, actually, well, that we can hold him responsible for what he says, does he not think that oil prices are going to, does he not understand that they're going to rise to a large extent based on decisions that he has made? Okay. It's obvious they like us knowing he is senile, says Oscar Tell. There may be something. There may be something to that. Okay. That, yeah, we are going to make you suffer this indignity, this humiliation. And they do it because they can. Dr. Deadname says, who is writing the note card? Who writes the retractions after his gaffes? Who was the man in the Easter bunny suit? He was an aide. Was he not? That was my understanding. They call it doing well by doing good. This is a story by Eric Fan at Muck Rock. Revolving door riches. How Obama-Biden officials cashed in during the Trump years. Most people have heard of Washington's revolving door, which allows politicos to cash in on their government service by roving between the public and private sectors, leveraging their government connections and know-how. Distaste for the revolving door and the potential conflicts of interest it creates is one of the few things that can unify Republicans and Democrats. Presidents Donald Trump and Joe Biden both enacted rules to try to limit those interested in passing through the revolving door. Yet officials on both sides of the aisle have also taken advantage of the revolving door. A first-of-its-kind analysis conducted by Columbia University's Brown Institute for Media Innovation, Muck Rock, and Forbes identified 151 officials who left the government in the final days of the Obama administration, then returned under Biden. We were able to track down before and after sets of financial disclosures for 77 of those officials, allowing us to see how their personal finances changed when they passed through the revolving door. So, S&P 500 increased 70% from 2017 to 2021, but those who passed through the door increased their holdings by 270%. And here's one example. Boiled down, the revolvers follow three basic formulas. The first, joining a big company and earning a big salary. Consider Samir Punyani, who started his career as a 23-year-old staffer on Obama's 2008 campaign before joining the Department of Defense and in 2017 jumping to defense contractor Booz Allen Hamilton. Punyani eventually earned $293,000 as a lead associate at the company. His wife, Bhavna Changrani, also worked for Booz Allen Hamilton as a lawyer. In 2017, they reported less than $15,000 in retirement savings, but by 21, they had built up an investment portfolio of $293,000 to $970,000, according to their financial disclosure reports, which lists assets in broad ranges. Property records show that the couple also upgraded their $465,000 Washington apartment to a $900,000 townhouse in 2020. Asked about their finances, Punyani declined to comment. It's not just mid-level employees who benefit from the revolving door. Between his tenure as a four-star general and the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin joined the boards of Raytheon Technologies, Nucor Corp, and Tenet Healthcare, earning more than $1 million in cash and $2 million in equity grants. In 2018, he and his wife purchased a $2.6 million home outside the nation's capital, now part of their roughly $7 million fortune. Representatives for the Department of Defense did not respond to requests for comment. You know, it seems to me if you're going to be, a general like Lloyd Austin, and then you're going to leave the military and make bank, that's it. You do not enter the government again. Because when Raytheon, which is one of America's largest munitions companies, when they make you wealthy, you're compromised. But apparently nothing wrong with Lloyd Austin making bank with Raytheon and then heading back into government as Secretary of Defense. And of course, which company has benefited especially from this fiasco in the Ukraine? Why, that would be Raytheon Technologies, wouldn't it? Let's talk about Michelle Rempel Garner, or Michelle Poppers Rempel, as I like to call her. Or sometimes I just like to call her Big Head. Big Head. Because she has a very big head. And she's a real bobblehead. She is a figure of endless fun, source of gaiety to the nation. She was born in 1980, described as Wikipedia, a Canadian politician who sits in the House of Commons as the Member of Parliament for the Alberta riding of Calgary-Nose Hill. Yes, she was elected originally in 2011 and served as a minister during Stephen Harper's premiership. Yes, her maiden name was Godin. Then she married some fellow called Rempel and dumped him, and then married a man called Garner, who lives in Oklahoma, which seems to be rather difficult to pull off because both Calgary and Ottawa are a long way away from Oklahoma. During the COVID panic, it became very amusing because she was essentially trapped in the United States. But she is infamous for her late night ruminations on her future. Because, she's good enough, she's talented enough, and doggone it, people like her. She has a Substack. I just made a big decision. In the past 3 weeks, I've been approached by many people to consider offering in the United Conservative Party leadership race. Offering in? What? People from all walks of life and political stripes have reached out to me to offer encouragement. The outpouring of heartfelt words from across the province has been incredible. The opportunity to lead this province is an incredible privilege and not one to be taken lightly. That would be Alberta. Every candidate has an internal checklist of things that needs to be in place when they decide to run for something. Strong track record, chops, strong work experience, campaign logistics, no scandal, full enthusiastic support of husband. She would be able to do it for the right reasons, whatever that means. So everything has come together, including a large amount of support from Albertans that I'm honored to receive. A poll released yesterday says I'm the front runner and could seriously challenge the NDP in next year's general election. I'm blown away. That poll is useless. Michelle Rempel Garner is far better known than any of the other declared or would-be candidates for the leadership of the UCP. It's just a Q rating that we're seeing here. So all the stars are aligned, and it's right there, except for this. As I was doing the final preparation to launch my campaign yesterday, I realized I had serious concerns about one big issue. From what I've heard over the last few weeks, there is a significant level of hurt and uncertainty in the UCP caucus team. I can sympathize. As a member of the federal CPC caucus, that's Conservative Party of Canada, we've gone through 3 consecutive election losses, 2 leadership resignations, and 1 leadership removal in the last 7 years. Let me preface what I'm about to say with this. The UCP has done a lot of good work and has put the province on a solid footing. Many members of the team have worked really hard and achieved a lot of good things. Same goes for the federal Conservatives. But in both parties, there have also been squabbles that have erupted in the pages of national media, public meltdowns, nearly missed physical fights. Where's the video? I want to see the video. Coups, smear jobs, leaked recordings and confidential emails, lack of consensus on critical issues, caucus turfings, people harassed to the point where they resign roles, and hours-long meetings where members have been subjected to hours of public castigation. Public castigation? I think if it happens, in a conference room or wherever, that's not public castigation. There have been heated exchanges to get basic concerns addressed, unjustified insularity in decision-making, shunnings, exclusionary cliques, and more. Oh, did the mean girls gang up on you, Michelle? This is all a matter of public record, and it is not exaggerated. The pandemic made all of this worse, but this stuff predates COVID. It is natural for passions to run hot, for egos to swell, and for intrigue to happen in politics. Anyone entering politics needs to be prepared to handle that. Trust me, I'm capable of taking a lot of heat. But the stuff I listed above that happens in both the provincial and federal parties crosses a line. It should never happen in a functional place of business, political or otherwise. In virtually every other workplace, much of the stuff that has happened would be treated as a violation of labor codes, but in politics, it's considered human resources 101. Voters care about this because it affects the people tasked with speaking on their behalf. They rightly have little tolerance for it. I don't know what she's talking about. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Why did you get into politics, Michelle Rempel Garner? Because you wanted to boss people around. Why do all these staffers get into politics? Because they want to boss people around without even having been elected. And then there's the hope that they'll inherit someone's seat and then get to boss people around. The public has very little sympathy whose job description reads bossing other people around. Apparently, politics is a rough and tumble business. But Michelle Rempel Garner wants to talk to the manager about this. Some people will argue that in politics, changes in leadership erase these problems simply by virtue of happening. They don't. These problems don't magically evaporate after a party wins a general election or has been in government for a while either. They accumulate. They might simmer down, but from what I've seen in my time in office, they tend to come back in some form because they've never really gone away. So Michelle Rempel Garner decides, she floats a balloon that she's going to run for the leadership of the UCP party. Guess what? She was not eligible to run because she was not a party member. Yeah. This is how she explains this. In 2017, I bought a multi-year membership when the WCP was created. When it lapsed in November 2020 during the height of the pandemic. Oh, you can't read emails during the pandemic? I was busy being the federal shadow minister for health. That's a real job. And there weren't many provincial political events being held where you could typically be reminded to renew. I'm sure they sent you many, many emails. So when I registered for the leadership review vote in February, I realized my membership had lapsed and I renewed it. Throughout this, I've campaigned for and supported the party, but nevertheless, I need a waiver from the party to run for the leadership as I was a few weeks short of the eligibility guidelines. In most circumstances, this is pretty routine stuff. But the article said that when I applied for the waiver, some members of the caucus supported granting it, but several other senior members, including people who I've had decades-long close friendships with, You might want to reconsider that assessment. Participated in an attempt to scuttle something minor that the rules allowed for. And while the waiver was granted, and I didn't take any of this stuff to heart, I think you did, my suspicions about what I'd be in for from caucus if I became leader were validated. Yeah. And bluntly put, I'm concerned about what would happen if I stepped in as leader under the present internal UCP caucus dynamic, especially considering that we would need to govern while preparing for a rapidly approaching general election. Well, as it turns out, Christy Clark, when she ran for the leadership of the BC Liberal Party, she had almost no caucus support at all. And then she managed to rally the caucus around her. Well, one way was by, winning. That helps, So for those two reasons, I'm not going to offer in this UCP leadership. What offer in? Who taught her to write? Who taught her to write? But this is Michelle Rempel Garner is a figure of mockery, largely a figure of mockery. But we have all this concern trolling going on about various conservative parties. Oh, can't we bring back the good old conservative parties that we love? No, you hated them. You said the nastiest things imaginable about them. There's a story here from Stephanie Levitz in the Toronto Star today. Smear jobs and cliques. Tory MP calls out party. Rempel Garner cites toxic politics while dropping Alberta bid. The Star has learned some of her fellow Conservative MPs have repeatedly threatened to kick her out of caucus in recent months over how she's handled everything from her advocacy of alphabet people rights to the party's ongoing leadership campaign. Advocacy of alphabet people rights means her championing poppers, which are dangerous drugs used by male homosexuals for a purpose I won't describe because it is disgusting. And of course, they've been associated with a Kaposi sarcoma, the lesions that were on AIDS patients, and also demanding that male homosexuals be allowed to give blood, because apparently we have a shortage of HIV and hepatitis in our blood supply. In turn, she's raised formal questions about why the conduct of members of parliament toward one another isn't covered by workplace harassment laws, and whether the law that allows MPs to kick one of their own out of caucus actually violates those laws. Yeah. Although she's publicly considered jobs in the past, leadership jobs in the past, she's always ultimately walked away. In the current federal leadership race, she became co-chair of Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown's campaign, citing his ability to make inroads in the multicultural and multi-faith communities the Conservatives had a hard time reaching. Again, Patrick Brown, every time I see a picture of this fellow, I think to myself, has anyone checked his freezer for body parts? But Michelle Rempel Garner, Poppers Garner, Big Head Garner, she is woke. She has ever so woke and fighting, shaking her fist at, well, here we go. In early May, 10 people were shot to death in Buffalo, New York by a man who allegedly believed in a racist conspiracy theory that white people are deliberately being replaced by people who are not white. But this is happening, and they're cheering it. Rempel Garner denounced the so-called white replacement theory swiftly, as did Patrick Brown. But Brown went further, pointing out that one of the adherents of the theory in Canada was one of the leaders of the so-called Freedom Convoy, so-called and scare quotes around Freedom Convoy, and criticized Pierre Poilievre for appearing to align with him. Poilievre had also condemned the racism that emerged during the convoy protests. What racism? Although he also backed the demonstrators' more general call for the end of COVID-19 vaccine mandates. Rempel Garner went on to write an opinion piece in the National Post warning that more must be done to combat racist theories permeating Canadian politics. Quote, "This is particularly true for leaders in right-leaning political movements where the sentiment may be more pervasive and the temptation to maintain it for political gain is greater. Promoting it or being silent when it occurs in the ranks amounts to the same things." Ooh, silence equals death, just like AIDS. That same day, she called out a racist email sent by a Polyev supporter to the Brown campaign. This was obviously a stitch-up, okay? So this fellow's carrying on about this email great replacement theory, and I'm a supporter of Pierre Polyev. No, because Pierre Polyev wants to open the gates, wants everyone to come to Canada, just as Michel Rempel Garner does. Michel Rempel Garner's position on immigration is, if white people disappear in Canada, that's a good thing, so long as it is done legally. And what did Stephen Harper's government do with illegal immigrants? Did it even bother to count them or estimate them? No, not a bit of it. Not a bit of it. Did Stephen Harper's government use the notwithstanding clause to overturn the Singh decision of 1986 Supreme Court, which ruled that if you step on Canadian soil or even in Canadian waters, then it's going to take the government years and years and years to possibly get rid of you? That it would be illegal for the Canadian government to say, we didn't invite you here, you have no right to be here, so piss off. No. And of course, Michel Rempel Garner is a member of, wait for it, the World Economic Forum. She is one of their young leaders. And she has claimed that, this doesn't mean anything. It's just a talking shop. Why did you join then? And again, I'll ask the question, if it's just a meaningless talking shop, why do all of these powerful people, truly powerful people, go to Davos every year to make obeisance to Klaus Schwab and the rest of them? I think it's dawning on people, perhaps dawning even on the Daily Mail, which has been one of the most irresponsible newspapers in the world with regard to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I mean, irresponsible with regard to the truth. Someone called David Patrikarakos, and who is this fellow when he is at home? No, the Mail isn't going to tell us who he is. But he has an essay, if the West looks away now, Russia will triumph. Ukraine's losing hundreds of troops a day, and yesterday another vital city fell. Yet the EU still seems to care more about Putin's gas, warns expert David Patrikarakos. Well, he's an expert, so you better listen to him. So apparently the EU countries care more about their own people than they do about the people of a foreign country. Shocking, I know. Dima looks at me and grins. He points to the sky and raises his finger to his lips. Shh. Any movement or sound will send Russian drones whirring toward us. Far above, they patrol the skies, searching for the targets and waiting to drop their lethal payloads. We're in the Donbass in eastern Ukraine, in a hidden army base on the front line of the war with Vladimir Putin's troops. Ukrainian soldiers with decades-old Kalashnikovs have dug into trenches while the drones of both sides buzz overhead. Inside the base, electric light is banned and people use their phones for illumination. Men are prohibited from mingling outside. Even a cigarette lighter could be enough to alert a drone strike. And all day long, Ukraine's soldiers go out on missions, and not all of them come back. The country is now sustaining losses of at least 200 troops per day, and even more are injured with limbs blown off from shrapnel and shelling. We fight every day, Dima tells me with a shrug. Yet to his great frustration and that of his countrymen, the attention of the world is inexorably draining away from this bloody conflict. Even as the air raid sirens wail over bombed-out Ukrainian cities and Putin's shells gouge craters in the streets and smash holes in the buildings of a European democracy. Oh, is that what the Ukraine is? A democracy where the political opposition has been banned, where all non-government TV channels have been banned, where press which is not reliably pro-government has been banned? Is that their idea of democracy? Yet the cost of living is increasing back home. Double-digit inflation plagues much of the Western world, and as recent strikes have shown, inflation usually spells social and political trouble. Energy prices are going through the roof, but let me tell you, all this is exactly what Vladimir Putin wants. He could scarcely have planned it better. Oh, no, wait. I thought Putin was this clown who'd made a terrible, terrible mistake and was going to be ousted by his own people or maybe overthrown in a revolution. Now it appears that Putin has gone from clown to evil statistic, evil genius. Quite remarkable. Quite remarkable, wouldn't you say? And more on the Ukraine. This is from Moon of Alabama. Ukraine sit rep. Zolot Cauldron closes. Lysychansk blocked. In the last sit rep about the war in Ukraine, I discussed the situation near Lysychansk. Ukrainian leadership is still sending new units into that cauldron in the east. The Russians do not mind that. Their job is to demilitarize Ukraine. To enclose more troops in one swoop makes that easier. There is a battalion of Ukrainian troops that was supposed to hold the villages in the upper area of the pocket, and they retreated. Some say they were ordered to leave. Others claim that they mutinied. The latter is more likely, as these were amateur infantry from the Territorial Defense Forces who, without sufficient support, had been sent to replace better troops that were ordered back. The Russians on the eastern wing moved west to take 5 villages in one day along the pocket's northern border. That put the lid onto the cauldron, which immediately began to cook the estimated 2,000 soldiers who were inside. The war is going Russia's way, and the Ukraine has had great difficulty for many years in maintaining an army because there are a great many Ukrainians of, well, fighting age who simply are unwilling to do so for the country as currently constituted. And let's look at the latest from antiwar.com. Ukraine receives U.S. provided rocket systems. European Union grants candidate status to Ukraine and Moldova. Lithuania president wants military spending hike, more NATO troops. NATO chief wants Sweden, Finland soon, but can't guarantee it. Biden blames Putin as Russian oil sales soar. Officials still don't know if U.S. arms are used to kill Yemeni civilians. Oh, I think they know. I think they know, and they either don't care or they fully approve. Again, they woke up one day and decided, yes, this is a serious problem. Yemenis must be slaughtered because why? Really, why? What possible reason could there be for that? Abortuaries in Arkansas, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Alabama announced all scheduled abortions have been canceled. This is from Information Liberation. Oh, and you want to know how cringe this has become? Well, I told you yesterday. Save your urine to make up for Russian fertilizer. This is not about the Ukraine, but. So I was at the Guardian site, and on the the column on the right-hand side, most viewed, and it was about someone called Jen, not Jennifer, but Jen Brister. After 10 minutes, 2/3 of the audience had left. The stand-up on the upsides of touring, her worst gig, and finding reasons to be optimistic. Apparently, she's an unhappy person. Well, most Canadian comedians are unhappy people, but they pretend not to be. And I took a look at this woman, and I had a certain feeling about her. That is to say, that she was a lesbian. And I looked her up, and indeed, she is a lesbian. She is 47 years old. And in this Guardian interview, she said that her biggest problem being a touring comedian is that men were after her. Oh, yes. Okay. So men apparently are after They just won't say no. They just keep coming after a 47-year-old, let's be kind, let's just say not particularly attractive woman who is obviously a lesbian. Is that really true? Does she really believe that? Perhaps she does. And what time are we at? Well, it's 5:29. So the war on tobacco is intensifying in Canada, but first this from Erica Ibrahim at Lakeland Today. Experts explain why Ottawa is being asked to decriminalize small amounts of drugs. Late last month, British Columbia became the first jurisdiction in Canada to make changes to ensure drug users will not be arrested or charged for carrying up to 2.5 grams of illicit drugs as of next year. It's the first jurisdiction in the country that will decriminalize possession of small amounts of drugs in an effort to stem the rising tide of drug toxicity deaths. People are dying of drugs. Make it easier for them to have drugs. I mean, it makes sense, right? Since January 2016, almost 27,000 Canadians have died from opioid-related causes, according to the Public Health Agency of Canada. Solving the opioid crisis by decriminalizing access to opioids might seem counterintuitive. But wait, many experts involved in researching substance abuse over the past decades have come to the conclusion over the last 20 or 30 years that using criminal penalties to dissuade people from using certain substances simply does not work. 20 to 30 years. That's about the time that we've had harm reduction. And what has happened to fatal overdoses, the numbers of illegal drugs in the last 20 to 30 years? Like that. So these people are incapable of learning from their mistakes. But war on tobacco. This is from Business Insider. Canada is moving to make tobacco companies print health warnings on individual cigarettes in an effort to slash the number of smokers in the country. Hang on just one second. Okay. Here's a package of Canadian cigarettes. And it's got a warning. It's got some picture. Cigarette addiction affects generations. And there's ghastly ones or whatever. And you'll notice here, it's very difficult for the clerks in the stores to find your cigarette now because they're all in identical packaging. And there's a little black rectangle here with the name. That's all you get. That's all you get. I just think, I don't even, the various, let's see if I can find a more sickening one. Okay. Here's another one. That's pretty grisly. And, risk of blindness. I just ignore them. I don't pay any. I didn't even, affects generations. I don't even notice that anymore. Now, Health Canada said that it plans to have the warnings printed on all individual cigarette cigars that have a filter and cigarette tubes. Oh, okay. So is the warning going to be on the filter? Because I snap off the filter. I make my cigarettes filterless because you can't smoke the filter. Labeling the tipping paper of cigarettes and other tobacco products would make it virtually impossible to avoid health warnings altogether, said Health Canada. If implemented, Canada would be the first country in the world to introduce such a requirement. Yay, Canada! The message currently being considered is poison in every puff, though that may change, Health Minister Carolyn Bennett told a press conference Friday. Poison in every puff. Do you know how cool that is going to seem to the goths and the like? Poison in every puff. Yeah. Terry Dean, the president of the Canadian Lung Association, and guess where all the money from the Canadian Lung Association comes from, called the move a bold and impactful strategy, one that will continue Canada's trend of being a leader in tobacco control. The government is also moving to make tobacco companies put more health warnings on their packaging, such as warnings of stomach cancer, colorectal cancer, diabetes, peripheral vascular disease, and cervical cancer. In 2001, Canada became the first country to require tobacco manufacturers to place graphic photos warning of the dangers of smoking on half of the front and half of the back of their packaging. The move has since been adopted by the likes of the UK and Australia. Around 48,000 Canadians die from smoking-related illnesses every year, according to the government. It's impossible for the government to come up with such a figure. Honestly, that is. Oh, somebody smoked and died of a heart attack, so it was the cigarettes that were responsible for the heart attack. The fact that the person was, 100 pounds overweight obviously had nothing to do with the heart attack or stroke. But of course, marijuana is fully legal in Canada. And as we know, marijuana, particularly high THC marijuana, causes a psychosis and schizophrenia. But those aren't important. We don't care about those things. Although, mental health, dealing with people with, diseases, psychosis, schizophrenia is very expensive indeed. Let's go to Jim Kunstler's column today, which is called When the Wicked Try to Flee. Now, I'm afraid I can't read most of it because I am on YouTube. But let's go to his peroration. The absurd grifting machine of American medicine is collapsing anyway, along with just about every other system we depend on. So maybe the doctors and the public health officials think that if they can delay acknowledging the obvious a few months longer, there will be no institutions left standing in the USA to adjudicate their crimes. Possible, but not likely. There's already plenty of data showing an abnormal rise of all-causes deaths in many countries. The life insurance companies have been reporting it for months. But the acquired immunodeficiency of the vaccinated will become too tangible and visible as the network effect takes hold, and ever more Americans realize that people are dying all around them, loved ones, friends, friends of friends, celebrities in the news. Inevitably, that would produce some kind of social panic. And at exactly the same time that gasoline and diesel fuel grows unaffordable or scarce, every conceivable product vanishes from the store shelves, the financial markets crater, and the party of chaos sends its shock troops into the streets to riot, loot, and burn. Even under those dire circumstances, realize this: there will still be a lot of people left in this country who are not vaccinated, not sick, and not insane. Millions. And they are the ones who are going to keep the project of civilization alive here, including bringing judgment upon those who set into motion all the aforementioned calamities and wickedness. Well, from your lips to God's ear, James Howard Kunstler. Let's take a look at Eusebius. Oh, some good news. Austria set to retire the vaccine mandate by end of August. Just to clarify, the Austrian mandate was never enforced. It was suspended in March to the end of May and in May to the end of August. Now the government is simply retiring the legislation at the end of the suspension. Eusebius comments, I often hear that opposition to pandemic policies is hopeless and that we are condemned to accept nothing but loss after loss. That's not true. This is a massive victory to Austrian opponents of mass vaccination, and it represents a serious defeat for the pandemicists who can now only speak of their defunct mandate in apologetic tones and with vaguely embarrassed excuses. General vaccine mandates are dead all over Europe, and Omicron is only the indirect cause. The vaccinators were already at the limits of their strength, even at the height of the Delta wave. Improving disease statistics merely drained off enough of the ambient hysteria to make their battle wholly unwinnable. They'll never acknowledge any weakness. They'll deny us the appearance of every victory, and yet, despite everything they do to present an invulnerable facade, they're not all powerful. We haven't won victories everywhere, but what we have done is increase the cost of their policies, making them look ridiculous, and developed a more compelling discourse about the pandemic than the pandemicist experts themselves have ever been able to manage. And let's go to Alex Berenson, his Substack. And, well, yes, another story from the New York Times on marijuana. The New York Times has woken up on cannabis all at once. This is from an article today, not yesterday's, a different one. From the story, this is from Harris Macrosano, who died of an overdose in 2013. A few weeks before Harris died, when he and his mother were on the phone talking like old friends, he lamented having ever tried marijuana. It was the root of all that had gone wrong in their lives. He said, "What do you mean?" she asked. Marijuana was a fickle friend, he explained. It would either calm him down like nothing else could or make him more anxious than he had ever been. I would have these panic attacks that I couldn't stop, he told her. He kept smoking anyway, desperate to win this game of roulette, and when he lost, he started looking for other substances to shake off the panic. Before I knew it, I was in way over my head, he said. Berenson comments, if this newly skeptical attitude about cannabis continues, its importance will be hard to overstate. The Times still sets the agenda for English-speaking news organizations worldwide. It has only become more powerful as competitors like the Los Angeles Times and Wall Street Journal have scaled back their ambitions. I'm not saying that because I worked there for a decade either. At this point, the door to my return, that's Berenson's return, is closed and locked and covered in sarin. At a minimum, the Times can probably make full national legalization of cannabis far less likely. Whatever is driving this change, and I can easily imagine it may have come from personal experiences that high-ranking editors have had with their children, we should all welcome and encourage it. Indeed. And let's go to the Daily Skeptic. How did universities become woke madrasas? Asks Toby Young. Climate scientist says humans cause less than 0.05 degrees Celsius of global warming and warns of anarchy from delusional net zero policies. One of Germany's most distinguished atmospheric scientists, Professor Hermann Harder, with Germany scouring the world for supplies of oil and gas and firing up dormant coal power stations, one of its most distinguished atmospheric scientists, Professor Hermann Harder, has castigated politicians for reacting to increasingly shill climate horror stories and believing they can save the world. Many of the research studies and horror scenarios are not based on a secure physical foundation, he said, but rather represent computer games that reflect what was fed in. The idea that humans can control the climate with their carbon dioxide emissions is said to be an absolute delusion. In Professor Harder's view, there exists considerable doubt about a scientifically untenable thesis of purely human-caused climate change, and it's completely wrong to assume that 97% of climate scientists, or even more, would assume only anthropogenic warming. In his view, climate and energy policy can only gain popular acceptance when they are based on reliable knowledge and not on speculations or belief. Harder retired a few years ago from Helmut Schmidt University in Hamburg as professor of experimental physics after a long career in science academia. For many years, Germany's politicians have been able to make virtuous green noises by closing nuclear power stations. What? That's carbon free. And banning exploration for fossil fuel. At the same time, the country started importing large quantities of oil and gas from an unstable Russia. The war in Ukraine has suddenly brought home to Germany and the EU the sheer stupidity of this dangerous policy. And more on masks. This is by Neil McRae. As a trade union rep for the workers of England, I've spent the last 2 years defending our members against intrusive, ineffective, and potentially injurious COVID-19 policies until 3 months ago when the vaccine mandate in health and social care was revoked by the government. Almost all my cases were workers who refused to take 2 or more injections to keep their jobs. Since then, the battleground has shifted to mask-wearing rules, often involving the same employees. A month ago, national guidelines for the National Health Service dropped ubiquitous masking in clinical areas. However, most NHS trusts were unwilling to relax from pandemic mode. Absurdly, no exceptions are accepted for face covering, and so we have a steady stream of cases with several members being threatened with dismissal despite valid health concerns. And, okay, let's go take a look at the chat. Used not to be able to find a pack, and now it seems they've gotten popular again, says Oscar Toe. Smoking is worst move I ever made. Hands down, number one, says Don Willis. I've been seeing Lucky Strikes more, says Oscar Toe. Beautiful design of the original design. I don't know whether they've changed it. Blacklist has said ban smoking, beards, and berets. Great box art indeed. Donald, smoke them if you got them. It's toasted. Yes, this Madman reference here in Canada. Well, from the time that I was a boy, rather a young boy, actually, my parents would send me to the store to buy cigarettes from them. I was still possible at the time. There was such a wide variety of cigarette brands available in Canada at the time. Even brands like Sobranis and Balkan Sobranis, and the cigarettes with the black, with the gold filter, and the black cigarette tube. And now it's all Imperial Tobacco, and they're pretty much all the same. And there's very few brands available because it's Canada, and in Canada, you take what we offer you. What was it? 2 years ago? The cigarettes, I was smoking Pall Malls at the time. Oh, and they said they were introducing new packaging, but don't worry, we're coming back with the same great cigarettes. Yeah, they came back. They didn't announce. It just turned out, could I get the extra large? Well, we don't have extra large. What are you talking about? Oh, they don't make them anymore. Oh, so you lied to us. You said that the cigarettes were going to be the same. And so effectively, you cut the size of the cigarette by 20% approximately. And that's what living in Canada is like. Black Russians, yes. Blacklist is the Dunhills for classy types. Oscar Toe says, I don't know if they are menthols, but the Luckies I've been seeing is a black and green box. Maybe college became woke because the base professors quit because they could no longer smoke while lecturing. I don't know. I wrote about this years ago. I find it hilarious that you used to see people, particularly young people, they're smoking. It's something to do with your hands, smoking. Now they all carry water bottles. And I'm thinking, is there a fear here? Is there a fear that there's not going to be enough liquid? That you got to cart around a bottle of water or a carton of coffee or whatever? If you're in the city, liquid is a couple of minutes walk away, typically, But no, instead of, using their hands to hold cigarettes, they hold water bottles now, which I find very, very amusing. Don Willis says, my smoking like Vantage, Lucky Strike, Pall Mall, Chesterfield, Lucky Strike, Sailor Boy, Downhill, Lucky Strike, Lucky Strike, Lucky Strike, last 10 years, Parliament. Did Kevin used to roll up his pack of cigs in his shirt sleeve? No. No. I've been wearing, jackets since the time that I was, 17 years old or something. Kevin would rightly sell off that Rolex. Rolex. I don't wear a watch, and I've never really worn a watch. One of the reasons is I just had this habit of losing it or hitting it against the wall, and cracking the crystal. And I don't know. I don't wear any jewelry at all. None. And I'm not really comfortable with jewelry. British Americans, hello, says now it's about time for the white hats. I would think for now, read every day between November 4th, 2020 and today. Blacklisted said, I'm finding it hard to find cheap smuggled tobacco now. There's no Indian reserves near where you live. That's what we do in Canada. My knowledge of Canadian cigs comes from Trailer Park Boys, says David the Gnome. You remember the candy bonkers? No. I understand that you can buy 10, 25, and 30 packs in Canada. Is this correct? That's Joe again, 666. No. You can't buy half packs. In fact, half packs were banned, and half packs used to be very popular in Britain. They were banned decades ago. I think maybe you could even buy 5 packs. But in British Columbia, it's a pack of 20s. Okay. In Alberta, and I suppose in other provinces, it's a pack of 25. Canadian cigs are packaged 10 by 10, like in Britain. Yeah, 10 by 10. British American says, remember that skit many years ago up smoking in the 1950s? A pregnant woman is in her doctor's office. They're both smoking, and he says, take a deep drag. Remember, you're smoking for 2 now. I think that may have been actually Dr. Spaceman from 30 Rock in, a parody of 50s cigarettes commercials. Cigarette packs used to be attractive. Yeah, they used to be. There was the Pall Mall, most beautiful American pack with all the filigree, and their slogan in hoc signo vinces, outstanding. But then this design trend took over, starting in the 1970s, classy but classless. You see, filigree and things like that, it puts certain people off. Oh, well, you think I'm some sort of sophisticate? I got to be some sort of sophisticate to use your product? And no, we're just going to make everything plain and dull for you because we don't want to offend your sensibilities. Now, I want to talk about Silicon Valley, the TV series. I've been rewatching it, and very amusing it is too. It was created by Mike Judge, of course, of Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill fame, and John Altshuler and Dave Krinsky, who were heavily involved in King of the Hill. The showrunner for the last, 3 or 4 years of Silicon Valley was the great Alec Berg. But so, I'm watching these episodes of Silicon Valley, and then I'd go to the AV Club for the write-up. And, of course, the AV Club has become largely unreadable now because it is so unbearably woke. But the AV Club reviewers and a lot of the people in the comments had a great deal of problems with what they saw as the stereotypes in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is about a startup company called Pied Piper and its struggles over 7 seasons, and their dealings with venture capitalists and the like, and their alphas and betas and trying to get product to market, etc., etc. So let's start with nerds. Yep, they're nerds. All the people involved in Pied Piper are nerds. Okay, it seems to me pretty realistic. When the show started, there were a lot of people in Silicon Valley who were angry about it. You're making us look bad. Well, I don't know. You're goofy, but you're making billions of dollars. That's a pretty good trade-off, right? This isn't like Big Bang Theory, because these people are coders. All right, they're very good at it. They're exceedingly intelligent. They work, and they work hard. And they understand a great deal about math and science. I've seen bits of the Big Bang Theory, and it just made me want to smash my head against the wall, particularly the corner of a wall. Yeah, nerd speak, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica. No, they talk a lot about computational issues in Silicon Valley and mathematical principles and the like. They're not half-assing it with regard to the tech. So let's talk about women on the show. And a lot of people really put out by this. There's not enough women on Silicon Valley. Well, one of the reasons for that is that there are not very many female coders. They're not interested in that sort of thing. Why do they have to be interested in it? The main female character in Silicon Valley is a character called Monica Hall. And yep, she's Canadian. She's from Langley, which is just outside of Vancouver. And so she works for a VC company, or several in the course of this show. And oh yes, she just looks pretty. Well, no, that's not true. She is pretty. She's exceedingly well dressed. A true autumn, as they say about her. She has a particular skill, which is that it's a rare skill. She can translate from nerd to human and from human to nerd. And there's not very many people who can do this. Also, the main VCs that we see in this show, Peter Gregory, played by the wonderful Christopher Evan Welch, who died after only 4 episodes. And his successor was Laurie Bream, played by Suzanne Cryer, who you will remember as the Yada Yada Girl on Seinfeld and as Roz's sexier sister on Frasier. And of course, a lot of these people in the Valley are on the spectrum. And Peter Gregory was very much on the spectrum. Laurie Bream, a little less so, but her line readings are absolutely hilarious. For instance, when Erlich Bachman, who owns 10% of Pied Piper because it was invented in his incubator in the Valley, he's really a failure. He had one idea, Aviato, as he insists on calling it, which was bought for not a large amount of money. But he's lazy and he's perpetually stoned, and he's a big personality, an overbearing personality. Anyway, there is a party to celebrate a Pied Piper achievement at her house, and Erlich doesn't know what to say to Laurie Bream. Not very many people know what to say to Laurie Bream, and so they're standing awkwardly together. And Erlich sees a picture of a dog. I think it's a beagle on the wall. And he says, desperate for any kind of conversation, he says, "Is that your dog?" And Laurie Bream says, "It's a dog," with perfectly flat intonation. And so Monica Hall, well, she's a smoker. And of course, Laurie Bream hates smoking, and we learned that cigarette smoking in Northern California is almost as unpopular as Christianity there. And Laurie Bream says that she firmly believes this: no one ever died of secondhand heroin. That is to say, cigarettes are worse than heroin. There was one episode where it looked like Reviga, the Reviga, which was the VC, which was funding Pied Piper, was going to drop them. And so there was no longer be a professional relationship between Monica and Richard Hendricks, who was the founder of Pied Piper. And she suggested that they might go out for a drink. And Richard Hendricks says, "So you date failures?" And she says something like, "Oh, lots of them." "Oh, yes, they're pushing these 2 people together." They weren't really. It's possible that she was just saying this out of kindness. There's really no attempt to make a romantic relationship. In this case, Richard Hendricks doesn't have any romantic relationships over the 6 years of the show. And do any of the others? Well, Erlich Bachman doesn't really. Nelson Big Head Spaghetti, he doesn't really have one. The great Martin Starr, who plays Bertram Guilfoyle, he is a Satanist, a LaVeyan Satanist with theistic tendencies. He has a girlfriend, but it's an open relationship, and it's that AT&T girl, Milana Weintraub. And we see her. Well, she visits them in the Valley for a few days, and then we see her on a screen, and that's about it. Kumail Nanjiani plays Dinesh Chugtai, and he is incredibly awkward with women. At one point, he says, whenever you find yourself with a woman, you have to explain why, so that they won't be frightened. You need an excuse, which you can speak. Why are you with a woman? Well, I have a reason. It's pretty funny. He makes a girlfriend, a hacker, a black hacker, who is a terrifying creature, and he actually denounces her to the FBI. And Bertram Guilfoyle says, "So you ratted out your girlfriend to the FBI because you're too much of a pussy to break up with her?" And Dinesh says, "I'll never tell, but I did." So other women on the show, not much in terms of other women on the show, because of course Silicon Valley is heavily dominated by men. Let's talk about racial stereotypes. There's an actor called Jimmy O. Yang, who's a stand-up, and he plays a character called Jin Yang. And he is the butt of jokes. He's in the incubator. What he does there is kind of mysterious. He has a funny accent. Well, he does have a funny accent. He has a very heavy Mandarin Chinese accent, and they actually sound exactly like that. His knowledge of North American customs is wanting. He's a very selfish person, but pretty well everyone in this show is exceedingly selfish. Let me put it to you this way. He gives as good as he gets. And Erlich Bachman has, decided that he's his mentee, and it's not really like that, because Jin Yang hates Bachman. Is your refrigerator running? He's constantly making prank calls, I am old, Erlich. I am old and dead and lonely. This kind of talk. So no, I can't imagine why people. Well, I can't imagine why people would be infuriated by Jin Yang. He's a hilarious character. As I say, he gives as good as he gets, and his character, the amount of time spent on it, grows bigger and bigger throughout the show. Now, of course, I mentioned Dinesh Chugtai before, who is from Pakistan, and Guilfoyle, he just never stops insulting him, often on a racial basis, which I suppose is rather daring. Well, when did the show start? It started in 2014 and it ended in 2019. Maybe they wouldn't be able to get away with this. There's one scene where they get the funding, big funding, and so they have these fabulous offices, and Dinesh insists on getting these large monitors, and he's got, like 6 of them, a wall of them. And so he's playing Microsoft Solitaire, and he's got this device where he can drag with his hand. And then he wins a game, and, you get the fireworks and all that. And he says, "I feel like I'm in Minority Report." This is a reference to a famous scene in Spielberg's films, Minority Report, where Tom Cruise is moving things around with his hand on the screen, and Schubert's Unfinished Symphony is on the soundtrack. So it's, "I feel like I'm in Minority Report." And Guilfoyle says, "Yeah, but you're just a minority." It's rather daring, I suppose, that Dinesh is in a group of awkward and often unpleasant people. Dinesh is the worst person on the show. He's worse than the Satanist. He's constantly hurting people, including his own relatives, acting towards his cousin, eventually talking his cousin into doing something which loses him millions of dollars, trying to weasel out of a commitment that he'd made to a family member, GoFundMe for an app. He's constantly lying about himself, about how popular he is and the sorts of things that he does. And when he gets the slightest whiff of power, as happens in the show, he goes completely over the top and manages to sink the company within 11 days. Later, in the final season, we hear this litany of things that he'd done back in Pakistan, including what his cousins had found a big box of British candy, and they were so happy. And then later he stole the candy and then told them that the candy was gone because God hated them. So I don't, this accusation of these terrible stereotypes. I mean, stereotypes are very useful. They're very useful indeed. And this show is tremendously funny. It's very sweary. Of course, most HBO shows are very sweary. But I can't recommend this highly enough. Silicon Valley. I mean, there is a repetitive nature to it. I mean, lots of rebooting within the show, pivoting, as they say. But it's a very rare show that appreciates work as much as Silicon Valley does, and it takes a bunch of nerds, obsessed nerds, and we find fun in what they do, but it doesn't mock what they do, not at all. In fact. So let's have a final look at the chat here. Most of those old pubs have great food. It's very competitive, so they have to be good, says Oscar Toe. Beautiful edifices and bar, all glass, look like a saloon, says Chokin 666. Gleason's. Okay, I'm not familiar with the place. Had the best food ever. Place was over 100 years in that location. I bet Kevin used to go to the pub and watch the Blue Jays, says Oscar Toe. When I was in Edmonton, I did. Because this neighborhood I was living in Edmonton, there was a neighborhood pub, which was I don't know, it was like about 4 blocks away. So I used to go there. And so I was talking to the fellow who owned the pub, who was normally behind the bar, and he found out that I produced Peter Weisbach's show at CJCA, and he was a huge fan. And you may think I'm making this up, but I'm not. There's promotional items that radio stations have, like mugs, right? That sort of thing. T-shirts, pins, whatever. The people who are fans of these shows are just fanatical about this sort of thing. They want this stuff. Now, we would have giveaways, contests, but not very many people are going to get it. So the fellow who owned the pub said, these CJCA mugs, do you think you could get me one? Very shyly, right? So I think I got him a couple. And we used to get free Edmonton Eskimos tickets at the station, and I passed on my tickets to him. So as a result, I used to get free drinks there, and if they weren't free, and the food was heavily discounted. So yeah, I remember when Joe Carter hit the home run in Game 6. I was in the pub. There'd been a guy sitting at the bar who'd been riding me all night. I thought, why would you go to a pub in Canada and, in the World Series and cheer against the Blue Jays in, a pub full of people who were there to watch the Blue Jays win the World Series? Okay. So let me just finally, yes, I wrote about this years ago in Alberta Report. I wrote a sidebar. There was a cover story about Marilyn Manson. I did the sidebar about Anton LaVey, and whereupon I discovered that Anton LaVey's theology was pretty much stolen wholesale from Ayn Rand. Yep, it's true. I also found out that there was a schism in the Satanist community between Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, which was atheist, and this other theistic Satanist group, which was run by a former USAF officer. Because I don't know, if you don't believe that any of it is true, then what would the point of being a Satanist be? But I'm going to wrap it up. That's all for tonight and this week. I shall be back on the air Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Oh, do we have more of this porn spam? Okay. All right. Hide user on this channel. I suppose that should work. Okay, there we go. Thank you all for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it, as always. If you would like to make a donation to the live stream, my PayPal account is linked to kevin_grace@hotmail.com. If you're in Canada, donations may be made to the live stream directly at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And as always, I leave you with this benediction. In these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear viewers and listeners, manage to forge a genuine human connection to ease the burden. Good night.